This is Leisha Holmes, and I'm your host on the Recruiters Recruitment Podcast. And I'm really excited for today's guest because we're going to be talking about an area which I think will interest an awful lot of people, but a passionate area for me as well. So this is Sebastian Petitti, and he is the owner and founder of Revorec. Welcome to you today, Sebastian. How are you?
I'm very well, very well. Yourself?
I am very well, thank you very much indeed. So for those not yet following you on LinkedIn and getting to know your business, tell us a little bit about who you are and what your business does.
So I'm the MD, my name's Sebastian. So the company itself, we're a STEM recruiter. So we do engineering, IT, energy and science recruitment UK-wide, soon to be establishing in Germany and the US as well. We've been going for just under 5 years, so I've done most of our expansion kind of post-pandemic, but quickly growing and trying to establish more clients and develop as a business.
Fantastic, and what a very succinct introduction that was, and how exciting. I mean, as we sort of start out a new year in 2023, it's always good to hear what people's plans are, and I think anyone that's looking at international markets, particularly the Golden Hills of America and Europe, I think it's probably a very wise decision. But how interesting that you've grown significantly since the pandemic. What do you put that down to?
Well, we'd only been going I was on my own for the first year. We started in May 2018, so I was on my own for the first year, just sort of working from home. I always knew I wanted to kind of grow, but when we started hiring, we then had 3 staff, and then the pandemic hit, so it's a bit difficult, really. But we found that the pandemic probably wasn't so bad for us as we was thinking, so I started hiring back end of it, and then the last sort of 9 months to a year, we've expanded significantly. So although we was a year ago, I think it was on 5 people. By the end of 2023, 25 to 30 people. So grown quite quickly. But most of it's been in the last sort of 9 months to a year, most of our growth.
Phenomenal. That's really how exciting. And then in terms of your market, so STEM is, for me, that's going to be talent short from my understanding. So
yeah,
so I guess the whole purpose of your business is to attract more people into STEM. So can we just go back a little step? Why do we have such a problem with the number of with the available talent in STEM? Why is there a problem historically?
I don't know. Is it a matter of opinion? But for me, a big problem that we have is as an education system, and this is sort of a macro problem in the UK. I don't think the UK has made enough of an attempt to try and replenish the skilled workforce we have. So if you think of the baby boomers now, so we place a lot of people in certain roles, tends to be either younger people coming in that companies are having to train from quite limited because they haven't come through a technical school or apprenticeship or anything like that. And the people that they're replacing did apprenticeships years ago. And apprenticeships these days are paid, you could earn more money working in a supermarket rather than doing a 3-year apprenticeship. So people tend to go the university route. Schools push the university route, which is great, but academically it doesn't tend to cover the vocational skill sets that we're missing. And I think over the last sort of 15, 20 years, that problem has continued, and we found ourselves a bit of a cycle. So we've got a skill shortage. And obviously with Brexit, I think that perhaps when we was in the EU, a lot of the roles that were challenging to fill were filled by migrant workers. Obviously leaving the EU, that's ripped the band-aid off. So there is a massive skill shortage, but I think it's just a continued issue based on the education system.
We talked about this offline, didn't we? And this is why in my intro I say that this is something I'm so passionate about, because I am going to make a massive opinion sweeping statement here that I think our education system missed such a huge opportunity in the pandemic and I don't mean teachers. I've got plenty of friends who are teachers, and my sister's a teacher. I'm not getting at the teachers here. I think the whole system needed shaking up that year, and instead what they did was they just brought everybody back in the classroom and they're just straight back to the same curriculum. And I think, having witnessed it myself as a mum, I don't think there's any emphasis on skill gaps, and that includes STEM. I think it's the traditional subjects, the traditional routes. There are exceptional schools, and of course they're probably going to be grammar schools, because that's where parents' expectations are, generally speaking, higher. But as a parent who put their children through the state system, there was absolutely no mention of any technical roles. It was all, you know, accountancy. It was all the traditional careers that, you know, we talked on offline around technical schools. You know, my daughter is starting an apprenticeship, and what you said there about the sort of the financial recompense, you know, she'll start her apprenticeship and I think it's £4.91 an hour. But actually, by the time she's 18, she will have 2 years experience in the job that she really wants to do. So I think it's the narrative needs to change in the education system. So I think that's we're both agreeing on our starting point, aren't we?
Definitely. I think that I don't know. I mean, I'm a graduate, but I was talking to one of the guys, and we was talking about this beforehand. And the weird thing is, if you think about it, I found this a bit strange. I went to UE, which is University of West of England, and a lot of people haven't heard of it. It's a mid-ranked uni in Bristol. It's not even Bristol Uni; it's the other one. And I did a media degree. So you look at it, and from a prestige perspective, the odd thing is, when I think about it, even though it's widely considered kind of a soft degree, because I'm not academic, it's probably you felt like most people, you fall into recruitment because reasonably intelligent but don't know what you want to do. Had I have known about that, had it have been pushed when I was at school, then possibly I could have found a career in it, because I do find it really interesting. I'm passionate about it. But I didn't really discover it until later in life, and then you can't afford to go back and retrain. So I think that the narrative about it, I think you're spot on with that.
It is, and you know, I started my recruitment career in 1998 in engineering manufacturing, and we did everything. We did automotive, we did process, we did, you know, chemical, we did food, we did energy a little bit, and even then, if I think about some of the candidates that I was interviewing, in fact my first month was spent interviewing tool makers and, you know, these process engineers, chartered engineers who were retiring even then. And I remember speaking to clients, so we're talking 25 years ago, where there was a skill shortage, and in 25 years we still haven't sorted the problem. So the problem is now we're playing catch up constantly. So I'm going to make another bold statement. I'm, you know, heading to 50, so I've got another 15-20 years working. I don't think this problem will be solved in my recruitment career. I think that it will be a generational problem unless we start putting the things in place now. Yeah,
I think it will. It's already hurting the economy, because you've got skill shortages, so you can't get stuff done. But I also don't think that the thing is, I don't think the issue is going to be resolved until it becomes a big talking point in politics. And and obviously, look, there's been other things that have taken priority, but I don't think for a long time it's as if the government have even acknowledged the, you know, really critical issue of having such skill shortages in the UK, because we're just falling behind, and it will take, if you want to introduce technical schools and you want to introduce a different training regime, it's going to take 5 to 10 years to recover that and turn that around anyway. So if you haven't even acknowledged the problem in the first place, and that's got a pro and a con. I mean, the pro is obviously, if there's a skill shortage, there's demand for recruiters for what we do, because there's a narrow, so there is a silver lining, but for the greater good of the country, it's only going to get worse.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And look, we're not being political here at all. Neither of us even know who we support. This is about looking at future economic issues, and it's not going to go away. And the fact is, like I say, my sort of benchmarking 25 years, it hasn't changed in 25 years. So how do you, I mean, there'll be plenty of people listening, you know, from inside the UK that understand this, but from people listening outside, how are you attracting? Because I want to understand, in a skill short market, so technology, you talk about expanding into that area, rec to rec, life science, you know, healthcare, there's so many skill gaps. How do you attract candidates? What's your method of work of finding the hard to find people?
The way we do this is from not just things like data analytics and stuff like that, but just some experience in the marketplace. You have to go about a multi-pronged attack, because you'll find that some industries, you will have people who still use job boards quite predominantly. Some recruiters will say, I'll just use LinkedIn. If we just use LinkedIn across the board for everything, we would not fill some of the roles that we fill, because a lot of the people we fill, they won't even have a LinkedIn profile. They don't use social media and stuff like that, or they're limited on it. Other people, you have to have a rounded kind of process to it. But the other thing, our approach is generally, we recommend with clients, because we're recruiters, we're not magicians. If you're looking for skills that don't exist, and you know, you have the ability to train people, then often we try and speak to clients and look at the realities of certain jobs. And if we can find someone who can do the job brilliantly, great. But if we have to find someone who's a 7 out of 10 who needs a bolt-on skill here or there, but they have the potential, so they might not be the best day one or whatever, but they're the best day 101, right, and you can work with that as a client and retain them long term. Yeah, you might have made a little bit of a sacrifice and had to make a little bit of investment in the training initially and get someone who's nearly there, but you need to bolt on the other bits to make them what you want them to be. But if you have the right retention strategy, you invest in that person, develop that person, and this is a lot of the clients we work with, you're going to get a return on investment with that client over a long period of time. Yeah. So we try to focus our approach on finding candidates that motivational and cultural fits for businesses.
Yes.
And therefore they can retain them. Otherwise, if you just have people leaving after 5 minutes, they won't come back to us. And you're only really going to see the benefit if you've had the time to train them in the first place. So you need that retention. So for us, we've kind of developed up a reputation for doing that and able to source candidates from different routes and not just going, we're just using LinkedIn or we're just using job board. Yeah. You have to have an all round. I think if you don't do that these days, you will struggle.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I think it's having a sort of multifaceted approach to it. But I like the fact that you focused on the training and development aspect for your clients too, you know, and looking inwardly as well, looking at who in the business could get retrained. That's a possibility. How did the pandemic, and obviously now looking forward, how did it impact your sectors from a hybrid point of view? Because I think from what I've seen across workplace culture, a lot of, you know, the narrative and a lot of the statistics that come out of places like Slack, because I listened to Bruce Daisley's podcast and it's all around workplace culture and he interviews, you know, lots of CEOs, and it's showing that people, you know, the workforce, particularly in skill short markets where a lot of new people will come through, they will request hybrid. How can that actually work, say, in a manufacturing environment or a lab environment? How feasible is that? Is that something that employees would need to think about?
So some of the jobs can be done hybrid. So we tend to find design roles, technical sales roles can be done remotely. But a lot of jobs, if it's in a manufacturing plant and it's a physical hands-on skill job, you can't do it that way. But I think most companies now, if a job can be done remotely or via or a hybrid method, where they come in maybe 1 day a week, most companies have it's not, well, they've adapted to it because they wanted to. They kind of had to adapt. Yeah. If you don't, you're just going to miss out on people. So it's not us pressuring them. Most companies, I think initially when it was the pandemic, there was some reluctance from companies that, let's say, are a bit old school. But I think pretty quickly most companies caught on, look, we have to adapt. Otherwise, you're just not going to get staff. And that's generally how it's worked.
Yeah, no, definitely. And obviously we're in METAVERSE now, apparently. I don't know if you've moved into the virtual world. It's something that I've been very keen to try out with the goggles over Christmas. So how do you think that the METAVERSE will transform the world for your clients and potentially for everybody? How will that change in terms of, because looking at education, looking at medical, they're going to be using Meta for training people. How could that work in engineering, for example?
I think the depends on the client, depends on the way they work. One thing that I think is there's such untapped potential. Obviously, the technology with it is the limitation at the moment. It's for as technologically advanced we think we are. I think there's still quite a way to go on it, and that's the exciting part. I think one bit that we found, obviously we're doing video now, you'll still have clients and candidates will do a video interview, but then the reality of it is you can't have a look around the site. You can't see this. You can't do a technical test or anything through those things. The beauty, if you can, when the technology's there, you could have it in a virtual kind of technical test where they're there, give a virtual tour around the site. And a lot of the roles being technical roles, that bridges the gap. That's the beauty of it when the technology exists. I think with the jobs themselves, there will be whole jobs and careers and things like that invented within the metaverse. So for me is extreme in the same way that I do think when technology gets up to level on it, it will replace the internet as we see it as a kind of 2D format and replace it in a 3D format. So Amazon will literally be you walking around the shops. Do you know what I mean? So it'll be really interesting.
Very dangerous that for me.
Yeah. So I think there will be, at the moment it's still in its early adopter stage, and I think it'll probably take a good 5 years or so to get to that next bit. But I think in 5 years' time, you'll then see it being quite predominant on what we're doing. So we're eager to kind of get into it, but it's very early on at the moment, obviously.
Yeah, it's exciting. Well, do you know what? In 5 years' time, let's come back and see how good your prediction was. Well, thank you so much. And we've throughout this, I hope this episode has actually been seamless to listen to, because we've certainly had a few technical challenges with signal, etc. So thank you for bearing with us if it has been a bit scuppery, but hopefully it's been seamless thanks to Shannon. We've really enjoyed having you on the podcast, and I love what you share on LinkedIn. I was saying that to you before we came on. You're a really positive, insightful, informative voice. So if people aren't connected to you, I hope that they do ask to do so. And thank you for joining us on the Recruiters Recruitment Podcast.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.